Anti-CCP war mobilization. Dissecting the dangerous logic of China's wartime propaganda. Hello, friends. Today is Monday, April 21st, 2025. Welcome to this episode of Inside View on China. Opposing war is a duty we cannot shirk. As I mentioned in last month's episode, the classified and top-secret documents from the Chinese military and foreign affairs departments revealed a troubling pattern. Xi Jinping's central leadership is embracing a war mentality. Their mindset is, war with the U.S. is inevitable. Negotiate while fighting, fight while negotiating. Pursue interests through war. It's the same playbook Mao Zedong used during the Korean War. This kind of military diplomatic thinking, ready to go to war with anyone, anytime, anywhere, is extremely dangerous. I predicted back then that the CCP would soon launch large-scale war mobilization. Sure enough, here it comes. Just yesterday, while scrolling Twitter, yes, Twitter, not WeChat or Douyin, I stumbled upon a short CCP war mobilization video. I was alarmed. What I saw was shocking. Take a look.
Sister, well, we're all so hard. Why do you still want to counter the old American? How difficult is it? No matter how difficult it is it more difficult for our ancestors to climb the ice and lie on the snow? No matter how hard it is it more difficult for our fathers to grind food from the ground with their backs to the sky? The hardships our ancestors and fathers suffered? Why can't you eat here? The Chinese nation fought bloody battles until today. Didn't generations come one after another? From generation to generation. Remember, this is not friction. This is war. It's not that we're going to fight. Someone else forced us to fight. Since it is a war, there are always people who have to sacrifice and pay the price. Now it's our turn. What should we do if you say no? Kneel down. Kneeling is easy. It's easy to die alone. But when we kneel, if you want to look up again, to get back up again, do you know how hard it will be? Less than 100 years have passed in the history of humiliation in modern times. If you don't understand, you can turn to modern history. We start with the first unequal treaty. That's where the expensive starts. You should know. Now, this situation, anyone can kneel, only we have no opportunity to kneel. Why is that? Because kneeling is death. Sink back. Why have we been able to hold our heads high in the face of the West over the past few decades? Is it because they are kind? Absolutely not. Our confidence comes from today's resistance to the United States and assistance to Korea. Victory is the confidence of the ancestors through their heads and has shed their blood. There was opposition. It was a tough fight, but we fought anyway. Not only did he hit, we also won. It's the same now. If we fail because of difficulties, not only will it waste the efforts of its ancestors, he will also become a sinner in history. The ancestors shed blood for 3 generations, standing up against the U.S. emperor. Now, what if it's our generation's turn to sacrifice? No matter how difficult it is much stronger than the predecessors back then. Do we want to make our ancestors look down on us? How can we lose the dignity of our predecessors who sacrificed blood, starved, and suffered poverty due to temporary difficulties? A generation has a generation. The ancestors never bowed their heads. How can we bend down? So we must fight back. We need to fight back with all our strength, with one punch. Avoid 100 punches. The same applies now. Since the United States is going to fight, come on then. If it comes to the most critical moment, if you need me, it is my duty, my money to be military. But it can't be compensation. My body lies in the trenches. Never lie in a mass grave. The world rises and falls. Everyone is responsible. Without Utri, there is no home. Without the rise of the great powers, there will never be the dignity of a small people. He said, America's a bigger tiger. Wear it with a poke. So we decided to fight to the death. More determined.
In the video, a girl says, "Sis, life is already this hard. Why are we still pushing back against the Americans?" Let's first note, from her accent to her posture, it's clear she's an actress reading a script. This is obviously part of the CCP's overseas cognitive warfare, and also a piece of domestic war mobilization propaganda disguised as patriotic art. Watching this CCP propaganda video, full of aggressive nationalism and war rhetoric, is truly shocking. But beyond shock, we must realize, resisting China's war mobilization and its global narrative warfare has become urgent. That's why I decided to use this short video. To dissect with reason and historical facts the absurd and dangerous logic behind it. My hope is to warn Chinese citizens, do not fall for this. These arguments may sound patriotic and stirring, but they are filled with faulty logic, ignorance of history, and a total disregard for human ethics. Let's look at the video again. A younger brother asks his older sister, "Sis, things are already so tough. Why do we still need to counter the US?" That's some twisted logic. It's basically a call to get ready for more suffering. This language is a form of manipulative political speech. It takes the hardships endured by past generations and uses them to justify our suffering today. It's brainwashing, glorifying pain. But this kind of logic isn't about progress. It's about silencing criticism, killing reflection, and forcing people to stay silent in the face of injustice or incompetence. It twists the lessons of past suffering, which should remind us to avoid repeating mistakes, into a reason to keep suffering and even celebrate it. When a country's narrative is no longer focused on improving people's lives, but instead insists, "You haven't suffered enough to complain," that means it has abandoned political responsibility and is relying on psychological control to maintain power. Our grandparents could take the pain. Why can't we? This sounds tough, but it's actually backward. It stops asking whether suffering is even necessary, and instead tries to normalize it. That's not resilience. That's cruelty from those in power. The people we should admire aren't those who treat their ancestors' pain like a family heirloom. It's those who make sure their children and grandchildren never go through it again. When a government tells its people to wear suffering as a badge of honor, it's no longer working for the people. It's using them as human shields. So let's ask, our ancestors gave their lives to overthrow emperors. Why? So future generations could live better lives. Not so they could live like slaves all over again. They didn't fight to replace one tyrant with another. Not to swap out Yuan Shikai for Xi Jinping. So this isn't logic, it's violent political rhetoric dressed up as patriotism. Let's go further. This actress then says, "This isn't friction, it's war." This is classic wartime propaganda. It whips up collective emotion and crushes individual rationality. It reduces structural tensions, economic stress, and diplomatic missteps into one simple story: inevitable war. We didn't start it, they forced us. But this mindset is dangerous. It erases any possibility of peaceful diplomacy. It turns conflict into destiny. It turns political choices into fate. There's no talk of policy failure, no mention of strategic miscalculations, no space for dissent or reflection. Just blame the enemy for everything. That way, all suffering becomes justified, all sacrifice becomes holy, and all dissent becomes treason. The people are no longer the goal of the state. They become fuel for the war machine. Yes, past generations made sacrifices. But that's not the whole story. History is not just made of bloodshed. It's made of creation and thought, of failure and lessons learned, of reflection, reform, and innovation. What really pushed China forward wasn't sacrifice or war. It was people rebuilding after destruction, people searching for direction in darkness. This isn't just friction. This is war. The implication? War has already begun. No more questions allowed. No more dissent. Just shut up and charge forward. This tactic, using fear to demand obedience, turns citizens into emotional puppets. Under this narrative that the people have no say, no right to ask questions, only passive gratitude and obedience. But we must ask, who gave anyone the right to decide on war for 1.4 billion people? Who takes responsibility for the consequences? Who suffers the most and who profits the most? War is the product of extreme politics. It's what happens when reason collapses. A responsible nation doesn't say, "We'll fight just because you made us." It puts the people's well-being first. It's not afraid of war, but it doesn't start one lightly. So when you hear, "Buckle up, we're at war," you should ask, is this really about protecting the country? Or is it about distracting us from deeper crises? Is this about national dignity or regime survival? This speech, drenched in tragic tone and desperate logic, tries to justify current policies, but it exposes a dangerous idea. Use war to end all debate. Use dignity to silence every question. On the surface, it talks about courage, sacrifice, and honor. In reality, it offers a false choice. Fight or die. Resist or kneel. It pretends there are no other options, but remember, the China-US trade war is about business. It's a negotiation. It's not a war. This kind of black and white rhetoric is designed to stir up emotions and hide the truth. It doesn't help people make informed choices. It takes those choices away. Just look at post-World War II, Germany and Japan. They were defeated nations. They surrendered unconditionally. Their countries were shattered. Young men were scarce. They owed massive war reparations. And yet, they chose to embrace peace, democracy, and freedom. In just 20 years, they became developed nations. And what was China doing in that same period? Struggling in poverty, losing millions to famine, plunging into the Cultural Revolution, dragged into the abyss by the same kind of rhetoric we hear today. Now it's our turn? That phrase might sound heroic, but it dodges the real question. Who decided this war? What's the goal? Are the methods just? Are the costs worth it? Is there no better way? Don't use "someone must sacrifice" to justify reckless leadership. They're arguing about trade deficits. One side wants a better deal, the other responds with threats of war. That's not leadership. That's thuggery. And don't tell people to be ashamed for struggling. Many can barely survive as it is. In city after city, livelihoods are falling apart. Life is getting harder. Mass layoffs are coming. It's going to get worse. National dignity doesn't come from slogans. It doesn't come from suffering. It comes from a fair system, from stable lives, from openness and trust, not from blind retaliation. You can stand tall, but don't drag the people into war. You can be firm, but don't reject reason. You can talk about sacrifice, but don't force others to die for your mistakes. So ask yourself, what really forces us to bow our heads? American imperialism? Western hegemony? Or the CCP's own oppression? Who's really suppressing people's dignity? Americans, Chinese, or the truth tellers? What's the real war we can't win? Foreign enemies? Or the system's war on truth, freedom, and dignity? This isn't about kneeling. It's about whether we still have the right to know the truth. It's about who pays the price and who gets to decide that price. It's about whether this country still treats its people like human beings. So what's the real problem with this propaganda? It's not the emotion. It's not the acting. It's the language. Dressed up as patriotism. That kidnaps the people, wipes out reason, and then turns war decisions, which should belong to the people, into a game for the powerful few. This is how they use historical suffering, to excuse today's failures, and how they use national dignity, to cover up regime crisis, how they use black and white rhetoric, to silence peace, thought, and truth. The future this woman describes is not one of national revival. It's a nightmare of national sacrifice. We must remember, true patriotism is not blind obedience. It's having the courage to ask, who speaks in our name? Who gets the privileges? Who pays the price? Who uses the name of the people? To cover up their own failure, in the face of this propaganda offensive, we must not stay silent. We must not comply. We must expose the language traps. See through the manipulative logic. Help more people realize. The biggest battlefield is not Taiwan or the South China Sea, or anywhere between China and the US. It's inside our minds. It's between conscience and blind obedience. Between freedom and slavery. That's all for today's program. Before we end, I invite you again. Please like, follow, and comment. Your support helps our small voice go further. If you'd like to listen on the go, search Do When or Inside View on China on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you for watching and listening. See you tomorrow, same time.